The HOA marched onto my property like they owned the whole damn lake, but one dusty old document from nearly a century ago was about to turn their little kingdom upside down. It started on a quiet Montana morning in early fall, the kind where the fog clings low over Silverwood Lake and the water looks like polished steel under the first pale light. I stood barefoot on my dock, the pine planks still holding the night's chill, breathing in the sharp scent of damp cedar and pine sap. This wasn't some fancy yacht club setup, just solid, hand-milled boards I'd laid myself over 2 long summers, with my father's steady hands guiding mine on the last one before the cancer took him. I promised him I'd keep the lake honest, keep it in the family. That dock was the last piece of that promise, still standing. Then came the sharp, deliberate click of heels on wood, completely wrong for dawn on a lake. Karen Blackwell, president of the Silverwood Shores Homeowners Association, strode down the planks like she was inspecting a crime scene. She wore a navy blazer that looked pressed within an inch of its life, hair lacquered against the wind, and a smile that never reached her eyes. Without a good morning, without even glancing at the heron fishing 50 yards out, she slapped a crisp violation notice against my chest hard enough to slosh coffee over my knuckles. 48 hours, she said, voice clipped and final. Remove this unauthorized structure, or we pursue property seizure. I blinked, still half in the peace of the morning. Ma'am, this dock has county permits. Stamped, inspected, everything. Irrelevant, she cut in. The HOA controls lakefront aesthetics and safety. Your dock violates multiple standards: non-uniform materials, excessive footprint, visual disruption to the shoreline harmony. It has to go. I looked past her to the mountains, rising soft blue in the distance, then back at the red stamped paper in my hand. Since when does the HOA own the water? Since we voted to protect property values, she replied, already turning on her heel. 48 hours, Mr. Whitaker. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. She walked away, steps echoing until the fog swallowed them. The notice shook slightly, not from fear but from something colder and steadier rising under my ribs. The lake lay flat and calm behind me, but I could almost feel it listening. By noon the fog had lifted and the sun turned the water gold. I was resecuring a loose rail when gravel crunched again. Karen's white SUV rolled up, followed by Tom Hale's battered pickup. Tom was the HOA's preferred contractor. Broad shoulders, perpetual smirk, and a habit of overcharging for approved composite docks that looked like floating picnic tables. He carried a clipboard and a laser measure like weapons. Provisional compliance check, Karen announced, stepping onto my dock without asking permission. Tom immediately dropped to one knee, tapping boards, running the tape, muttering loudly for effect. 3/4 of an inch over standard setback, he declared. Load distribution is off. This thing's a liability waiting to happen. I kept my arms crossed. County engineer signed off 2 years ago. You want to see the report? Karen didn't even look up from her notes. County approval doesn't supersede community covenants. We require uniformity. Our residents paid good money for predictable lakefront views. Tom grinned. We can have a new composite platform here in a week. HOA discount, even. There it was, the backroom deal dressed up as regulation. I felt my jaw tighten. Not under current guidelines, Karen said sweetly. New regs went into effect last spring. You should have received the email blast. I hadn't, but arguing with a brick wall wastes breath. They left with warnings ringing in my ears. That evening I found the first stack of flyers on my porch, glossy, full color, screaming unsafe dock endangers our community, with a deliberately darkened, crooked photo of my dock that made it look ready to collapse. Someone had been here at dawn, dropping them like propaganda leaflets. Next morning, frost glittered on the planks. I spotted the sabotage near the ladder, a fresh, clean split in a support beam, the kind made by a pry bar or a heavy boot stomp. Not weather, not wear, deliberate. My stomach turned cold. I spent the afternoon mounting 2 wireless cameras, one watching the path from the road, one covering the dock from the tree line. Live feed on my phone. If they came back, I'd have proof. They did come back. Just after midnight, the motion alert chimed. Grainy night vision showed 2 hooded figures, One unmistakably Tom's wide stance and swagger, circling the dock, flashlights off, taking phone photos, then slipping away into the dark. No new damage, but the intent was clear. They were building a case, one staged hazard at a time. The next day, I loaded my father's old leather folder. Yellowed survey maps, handwritten notes, faded receipts for lumber and galvanized bolts, and drove the winding road to the county courthouse in Garnet Ridge. The records room smelled like old paper and coffee left too long on the burner. Martha Jenkins, clerk since before I was born, looked up over her half-glasses. "John Whitaker, haven't seen you since your dad's passing. What are we hunting today?" "Anything on Silverwood Lake water rights. Old dam agreements, watershed stuff. My father always said there were protections nobody remembered." She studied me for a long moment, then grabbed a heavy key ring. "Let's go digging." Deep in the stacks, she pulled a thick file bound with rusty metal clasps. Silverwood Reservoir, 1923 to 1928. Inside were engineers' sketches, carbon copies of correspondence, and one page that stopped my heart. Handwritten in careful fountain pen ink, underlined twice. Perpetual water management and overflow control rights granted to Jeremiah Whitaker and heirs in consideration of private engineering services and capital contribution to dam construction. Said rights to include supervision of shoreline structures, water level regulation, tributary maintenance, and approval authority over any future development or association seeking to regulate or alter said waterway. My grandfather's signature stared back at me. Martha leaned in. "That's not boilerplate, John. Counties don't hand out perpetual lightly. Your family basically co-engineered the dam to prevent downstream flooding. In return, they got veto power over anyone messing with the lake." Flipping further, I found maintenance logs signed by my grandfather, then my father, and finally a notarized transfer dated December 1998, right before Dad's heart attack, placing the rights in my name. I'd signed the acknowledgement in a lawyer's office, numb with grief, never really understanding what it meant. Martha made certified copies, stamped them, and slid them across the table. "Honey, the HOA never asked for permission. Legally, they don't have jurisdiction over a single ripple on that water." The weight of 90-year-old ink settled in my chest like lead. This wasn't just about a dock anymore. Storm clouds rolled in that afternoon, heavy and dark. More laminated flyers appeared. Neighbors started avoiding eye contact, and Karen's SUV cruised past slowly, twice. Then the email blast. "Emergency HOA meeting, 7 p.m. tonight. Subject, immediate enforcement action against non-compliant structure." I could have walked in waving the documents and ended it right there. But Sarah Monroe, my attorney since college, had one piece of advice when I called her. Let them overplay their hand. Every word they put on record is another nail. Sheriff Hank Dawson stopped by at dusk, rain already tapping the roof. "Heard things are heating up. Meet me there." "Just keep your radio on," I said. "Might get loud." The community hall smelled of damp coats and institutional coffee. Folding chairs faced a long table where Karen sat flanked by two nervous board members. A projector screen glowed behind her. "Emergency session, dock hazard and enforcement." She opened crisply. "One resident's refusal to comply threatens our entire lakefront. We have documented safety violations, resident complaints, and now visible structural compromise. Tonight, we vote on escalating measures, including liens and potential foreclosure proceedings." Murmurs rippled. A doctored slide showed my dock looking warped and dangerous. I stood. "Evening, folks." Every head turned. I've listened to the accusations. None of them hold water, literally. I laid the 1924 document on the podium. This is the original water rights agreement between my grandfather and the county. It grants perpetual management authority over Silverwood Lake to my family. Any structure, regulation, fee, or alteration requires our written consent. The HOA never got it. Karen laughed, short, sharp. "That's ancient history, irrelevant to modern covenants." Sarah stepped forward from the back row, briefcase in hand. "Actually, it's been reaffirmed in county records as recently as 1999. I have certified copies here. The law hasn't changed. Sheriff Hank moved to the side aisle. For the record, I've reviewed the documents. They're legitimate. An HOA cannot override recorded water rights agreements. Not in this county. The room went still except for the rain hammering the metal roof. Karen's composure cracked. This is absurd. One man cannot hold an entire community hostage with century-old paper. A board member, quiet Ed Thompson, finally spoke. Karen, did you know about this? She didn't answer. Tom Hale shifted uncomfortably against the wall. Sarah continued calmly. Karen stood so fast her chair scraped. This meeting is adjourned. She stormed out. Most of the board followed, rattled. Neighbors lingered, some whispering apologies, others just stunned. But the fight wasn't over. Next morning, the lake level had dropped 4 inches. Mud rings showed fresh around the shore. My cameras caught it all. Tom and 2 men at the inlet gate just before dawn, cranking the control wheel down, talking about enough drop to make the inspector call it unstable. Karen wanted photos by lunch. I drove straight there. They froze when I stepped onto the path. Morning, Tom. Lowering a county flood control gate without authorization is a felony. He tried to bluster. Just routine maintenance. I held up my phone. Live feed timestamped. Their faces drained. Sheriff Hank arrived within 10 minutes. After reviewing footage and statements, he read them their rights on tampering charges. Citations issued. County engineers were already en route. Word spread fast. By afternoon, the county commissioner had opened a formal investigation. Unauthorized regulation, fraudulent fee collection, misuse of association funds. A cease and desist order landed on Karen's doorstep that evening. Another emergency meeting was called 2 days later, this one mandated by the county. Sarah delivered the official notice in front of a half-empty hall. All HOA regulations pertaining to water access, docks, shoreline structures, and related assessments are hereby voided. Previously collected water usage fees must be refunded within 60 days. Karen sat rigid, face mottled red. I was trying to keep standards high. Protect our investment. Ed Thompson spoke softly. We trusted you, Karen. We didn't know. Hank escorted her out for questioning. She didn't resist. Tom's contractor license was suspended pending review. He'd never work in the county again. Weeks passed. Refunds were issued. Neighbors began stopping by, some with casseroles, some with quiet thanks. One older couple admitted they'd paid hundreds in bogus lake maintenance fees for years. I rebuilt the dock stronger than before. New pine, brass fittings, a wide bench at the end facing west for sunsets. On the backrest, I mounted a small brass plaque. For those who respect the water. For those who remember the past. For stewardship, not control. Winter arrived with light snow. I sat on that bench one clear morning, thermos in hand, watching flakes melt on the dark water. The lake breathed slow and steady, unchanged by the drama, patient as ever. Nobody owns a lake. You can only care for it while you're here. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever dealt with overreaching neighbors, petty tyrants in positions of small power, or the quiet injustice of rules that aren't really rules, drop a comment below. Have you ever had to stand up against that kind of unfairness? What happened? Do you think people should fight back harder in everyday life? Or is it better to just keep the peace? I read every one. Let's talk about it.